We have just celebrated 5 years of the Constitution. And the big question we ask ourselves, and we get asked every time we go to this informal settlement, is, so what is the benefit of the Constitution? And you sit back and ask yourself, really, this person is still living in squalor. This person still doesn't have a good sanitation facility. This person still doesn't have a job. This person still doesn't have a good house to live in. Many civil society organizations have made attempts to try and create solutions around some of these basic service deficiencies. So a conversation around this kind of conference platform starts to help us to harmonize those successes and also to start to learn from the challenges that we have, so that when we are able to interface with government as a general platform, we are offering solutions that we know can actually benefit these populations that we have interest in. And we see very, very clear relationships emerging with state, with county governments. And that is, to our view, in a final analysis, extremely transformative.
The biggest contradiction is to pretend on one side you want development, on the other side sustain very mind-boggling levels of corruption. It's a zero-sum game. So my assessment is that we need to ensure that we deal decisively with corruption if we must ensure that every penny is money's worth in terms of the development that we are trying to undertake. You can't roll out 6 schemes of development just because you want to get your commissions and your cards in terms of the developmental agenda. I mean, development will come, but development must also follow certain patterns of humanity, or certain patterns that are in the realm of policy that does not dispossess and disenfranchise people already in positions that are underprivileged. I'm happy to be part of this dialogue. I believe in many of the aspirations having come from the sector of the human rights fraternity, social justice movements. And I think it is important that we now use our collective efforts and energies to build synergies that can actualize our aspirations through either policy reform, through legislative reform, through bearing responsibility and demand on those we elect to positions of government.
The urban program is extremely exciting because cities are growing so fast in Kenya that there's a massive gap in services and infrastructure which can be provided by the government. The World Bank is attempting to narrow that gap through a number of urban programs. I think the biggest dilemma is with respect to access to land, because that's the source of the inequality in Kenya. It's a very, very difficult problem to solve. As I mentioned, we do try to engage in the land sector. In fact, CSUDP has a component on land tenure regularization, which is doing planning and surveying in settlements that are on public land, and then also giving letters of allotment and titles ultimately. And that's happening in many cities in Kenya. We're directly supporting that activity. And we do feel that the difficulty in the land markets, the overlapping titles, the multiple claims to specific piece of land, the poor management of land information systems, makes it very difficult for businesses to do business. And that's holding back the employment of the youth that you mentioned, and the manufacturing sector is very much disturbed by that. And it's wonderful to see many advocates for urban agenda participating in the conference, because I do agree with a couple of the speakers that there hasn't been enough focus on urban in Kenya, especially with the new constitution and the failure to account for urban areas within the levels of government. It has fallen by the wayside to some extent, and that's really not going to help out Kenya in the long run, because urban areas are the engines of growth in all countries, so they need to be attended to. And through conferences such as this and creating awareness, we hope that we can influence the political agenda as well.
Urban development is one of our priorities for development cooperation with Kenya. We have to continue highlighting the need to really refocus or focus again on urban areas, and try to support the county governments to actually really see that this is in their own interest, and try to help them with capacity. but also try to strengthen national government. It has a big role to play in terms of setting this as a national agenda. CSUDP has been able to really engage from that perspective, knowing that government, you can push them sometimes, but other times they're actually asking for answers, they're asking for help. And therefore, when you're having this voice, I think you really have a lot more impact, you have a lot more influence on government than when you're well coordinated like this and you're able to put stuff on the table.
The Constitution is very emphatic on citizen participation in governance. So you don't expect every person, every individual to come to town hall, to come and participate in government. You need them to organize themselves into clusters or into units. And civil society is a very, very good example. The governments, both the national and county governments, cannot do without development partners, because they supplement or they complement what we are able to do on our own. Particularly now, with the kind of corruption we are seeing in the counties, both in the assemblies and in the executive, the civil society should be there and should be part and parcel of oversight. This is one of the most valuable conferences we can have in terms of sensitizing different actors in the urban sector.
What we see both historically and even currently is that we do not seem to have as a country or even as a region the bare minimum standards of qualities of life that we want for our people. Figure it in your mind. Somebody who's hungry, who has not bathed, who has been molested outside there, who has no home to live in, who cannot dress, can this person be included in society? Can this person go to church? Can this person have meaningful conversations with their friends and all those sort of things? Can this person attend a public rally? Can this person be in a space like this? They cannot. So these do not only degrade, but they also bring in extreme exclusion. What we do is we focus on the supply side, we focus on water, and we focus on the environment, and we don't focus on people. We are saying, if you do not tackle this from a dignity point of view, the individual ceases to exist. And in fact, you'll think the governments are doing very well, but they're actually doing badly. Look at infrastructure and where it's being expanded in all our towns. Really, whether it's roads, whether we're thinking about rail, think of where the rail will pass, whether we're thinking about expansion of water and so on. In fact, in most instances, it's people who already have these services that are getting them. Yeah, so you increase your water supply, but it's rich people who are using that to fill up their pools and to water grass. And meanwhile, the person who didn't access water in the first instance still doesn't access it. There's a shift that we want to see in the discourse, that all the bundle of socioeconomic rights must be interpreted from the perspective of those who are least likely to access them. More directly, they must be interpreted from the perspective of the poor. And that is what shifts the discourse. That now when you're looking at dignity is personal. Dignity is not a group thing. Service provision must have a human face. The dialogue must shift from planning being about plans, from development being about projects, to these things being about people, and ensuring that people's humanity is actually protected.
When you have a rapidly urbanizing, whether it's a city or a peri-urban place, and you have institutions that are charged with the responsibility to provide for those services, which are kind of struggling from the perspective of policy, institutional strength, or enabling legal environment, it then begins to create a lot of inequalities for the vulnerable, who are the majority, who can't be able to properly voice their concern. Our value add to the conference is much more of our community work we do in urban areas, focusing on direct development. And now for us, the need and the opportunity for this conference is how do we share our experiences from community development to begin to challenge and push for national policy discourse that are much more sustainable.
When you come to such a forum, it is rich in terms of partners in development, in terms of ideas, and in terms of also sharing what you have done as something that is worth sharing.
People are saying they want to influence the urban agenda. People are saying there are some missing gaps in the urban agenda as a result of the the constitutional dispensation, which only gave us two lines, which are about national and county. The position of the urban area, the cities, towns, has not been is not clearly articulated and so on. And that worried people. People are also very much concerned about the enabling legislation that was supposed to make sure that the urban are well managed through the Urban Areas and Cities Act. Became a non-starter because of the classification issues and so on. People are concerned about the rate at which the legislative agenda moves in this country. They were saying, how can we as civil society organization, together with other partners, fast track this legislation and so on. People are extremely passionate and concerned around issues on dignity, and they provided forms and different ways on how people are being indignified, whether it is how the houses they were living in, whether it's the prices of services that are completely unequal to their bit. It's like the penalty of being poor, staying in the informal settlement, that is reflected in having to pay for inadequate services, very high, very, very expensive. People are quite worried around that. And they found the whole agenda of the conference very appropriate because it touched about policy, it touched about dignity, it also touched about the social agenda, how the interface between what the grassroots need to do on day-to-day basis interfaces with the county, with the national government. We had a very interesting discussion on how can we then begin to form coalition for action. That was very well articulated by the veteran Egulu in this Lavinda Namba. That was very useful. Very good resolutions came on, which touched on all the three key areas, what actions need to be done, including what the civil society themselves are going to do. And they finally ended up with a call to all stakeholders that they need to move together to make sure that this urban agenda is properly articulated and kept on moving. And there was commitment to all of them, including the organizers, that there will be annual conferences around subject matters that will be chosen, preferably done in October, so that it can tie up with October as an urban month. And I think this is quite great. So I live here feeling fulfilled, feeling that we have an agenda that we put on the table, and the challenge is just to make it happen.